Okay, so we are ready to start. Our first speaker, Hanne, she's part of an initiative in Brussels that is called Commons Josephat. It's a collective of professionals and inhabitants who aim at transforming a land from the outskirts of Brussels using participatory process. She is also part of Recoup Kitchen initiative, a mobile kitchen that collects food and gives them a second life. She's a PhD researcher at the University of Leuven, and I would like you to welcome on stage Hanne.
Hi. The first slide, I'm just going to let you read it. So this is basically the starting point from which the collective of Commons Josephat gathers. This is a small part of our group, a part of the core members. We are a citizen organization. We are self-organized, so most of us work entirely voluntary on this project. Some of us, like me, have a professional interest. And we like to be very open and loose in our organization. We like to have a horizontal structure. And so I think it's also important that before I start to explain what we do as a collective, I also position myself and my interest within Commons Josephat. So as I was already briefly told, I'm a researcher at the Faculty of Architecture of the KU Leuven in Brussels. And I'm also connected to the Polytechnico in Turin. I do research by design, which I learned is maybe not usual here, and which is actually an approach in which I actively participate in processes in Brussels. I do design interventions as a way to share and to create knowledge. So it's a very action-based experimental approach to research. And so actually my interest starts from participation in architecture. So I would like to briefly introduce the context and the history of participation in architecture, at least for Belgium. I know it's quite similar in Italy, but I can't tell about how the history is working here. But basically it's a quite young discipline, as to say, which started in the 60s, 70s. With a kind of first wave of participatory practices which were more aggressive as opposing institutions, opposing certain way of profit-driven developments, from which the first example is by the atelier of Lucien and Simon Kroll, which made the student housing going in against this university pampering mentality, but giving students the opportunity to change actually the building themselves. Then in the 90s, we had a new wave of participatory practices, which were mainly funded top-down. So we had Europe, we have developers, but we also have our country supporting participation in the development of the city and developing projects. And then today, we feel that there is this new movement going on, and I think this entire forum has been a nice show of all the interesting practices that are currently going on. But it's quite interesting to see that there are very small interventions like the ones we saw here in Trachea, which are really nice, but which you could question how architectural, how iconic their impact is in a physical way, at least. Anyway, I think all of these waves are connected, and they start from a certain desire of the architect, of the citizen, of a human being. And I think it's really important to recognize that there is a certain logic in all of these participatory practices, which start and first will go and look at the community, at the people behind the project. So, for example, if someone wants an extra window in their house, or they want to change the facade, like I saw a lot going on here in the neighborhoods, why don't we just do it? Because it makes people feel home. Why do we, as traditional and general architects, think that the aesthetics of a facade is more important than how people feel in their home? And so currently today, this kind of logic, this way of designing, of thinking, I recognize in the ideas of the commons and the commoning practices which are getting more and more renowned these days. So briefly to introduce this idea of the commons, which might be not familiar for everyone. I think David already gave a quite nice introduction or a quite nice view on what commons can be. Generally, with the collective, we try to explain it by projects that people around us know. So Wikipedia is a very nice example of how people share knowledge as a common resource and how they take care of it as a community. On the left side, we also have a cooperative raised by citizens to create green energy. We have projects which create housing which is affordable, which see land as a common property and not only private or public. We have examples of people who create a local currency. We can create another more community-oriented dynamic in a neighborhood. So that explains the first part of our name. Basically, our group evolved around this idea that everywhere in Brussels, in Belgium, but also here, we see this very interesting community initiatives. People, citizens gathering and creating a valid alternative because they follow this certain logic of this humanity. And so we started to reflect about what would be possible if we managed to upscale this. So the question which also Michelle already posed in the presentation before. So what if we would be able to bring together all these small or already very inspiring initiatives we know, and what if we could connect them on an urban scale and create an alternative based on these principles? So Josaphat. As we know that there are a lot of very interesting initiatives, we want to bring them together in practice, because there is a lot of theory about the commons. It's very interesting, very rich, but what would that actually mean if you do that on an urban site? So in Brussels, we have the Josaphat land. It's a site of 24 hectares, which for us is a very big area. It's positioned in the middle of the, not in the middle, but in the middle of the urban tissue of Brussels. It's a very interesting area because it's publicly owned. It's basically one of the last areas in Brussels which is still owned by the government. Today it's a wasteland, and it's waiting to become developed into a new and sustainable neighborhood by the government. Very interesting position, we believe. And so we are reflecting how would this neighborhood look like, this new sustainable neighborhood of the future. How would that look like if we can put all these principles of the commons, all these initiatives we see together and create a way of creating a new city? And that's actually the base for Common Josaphat. And we started to evolve around the slogan, in case of emergency, create your own city. So after we gathered a group in 2012 of people who know very interesting initiatives and who were interested in the project, we decided we wanted to open up the approach. Because for us it's really important that it's not just a couple of intellectuals having great ideas about this site. We really want to engage people in this project. And so in 2014 we launched an open call for ideas. We asked locals, we asked children of the local schools, but also international architects to give us ideas for this open site. Starting from this very interesting feedback we had through these ideas, we organized different workshops, ateliers, in which we were discussing what would be a nice future proposal for this site. And very soon it turned out that it's not about the form of this place, about density per se or the numbers. It's actually about the way it's going to be developed. So it's not about if you have parking spaces or not, but how do you create this and how do they respect people? And so this reflection resulted in a collectively written proposal which called Josaphat en commun. It's a proposal for the Josaphat site as a commons neighborhood. Fortunately, I won't have time to go entirely into the detail of this proposal, but basically we grouped different themes, and for each themes we have been reflecting on what these ideas of the commons could mean for a city. So we started with the government of this place. How can this new neighborhood be developed and governed, not only by the public actor, but also bringing in the users and the residents of the site, so also the private and the citizens, in a sort of collective government system. We've been also reflecting on the economy of this new area, because if you create an entire new neighborhood, you also need a way to gain people a way of living, but how can you do this in a more sustainable and a more circular way? We also have been mentioning the urban ecological structure, as water, as green, as parks are very important common resources which we have to take care of together. With this, we also wanted to make really clear that our idea for this future neighborhood is realistic. And for this, we proposed an alternative financial model, so we can also go to the government and tell them it's not just an utopia. We have numbers, we have people who have been calculating that this is really possible. Furthermore, we discussed how public space can be seen as a common good, and I think, David, thank you for the inspiration. We certainly will get the info also as an inspiration for our work. We also have been talking about mobility, about energy, and how this is possible if we would create this as a community. Currently, the document has been published publicly 1 year ago, but it's still open. So please, if you want, go to our website, read it, it's in French. So for those who can, please read it and give us feedback, because we want to have peers help us to further develop this proposal. And very interesting is that now currently there is a group working on the topic of health, which is often overlooked in urban planning, because we don't only need doctors and hospitals for when people are ill, but we actually have to plan the city in such a way that people feel good and that they don't become ill. So starting from this proposal, we have been using this document to talk to the government, to talk to the public actor of the site, the public owner of the site, in a way to start the lobbying process. Because we really want to have an impact. We really want to show that this alternative is possible. Starting from this proposal, we are currently taking on 2 directions. We are going in parallel, and which I think are very interesting in combination with each other. So the first part is this working team which works on the modeling of an example site. So here you see a part of the master plan which the government is currently finalizing for the site. It is their intention to build the site entirely full. This is the first phase. So this is basically what they aim to have been realized or to be built by 2020. I don't think it's very realistic, but we'll see how it's going to be developed. And so a part of us have been working on the small part on the existing plan and bringing together diverse actors within Brussels to really form a solid, realistic proposal for the development of this housing block. So basically, we have been looking at the numbers of the official plans. And for example, we bring together very interesting initiatives in Brussels. We have Passage, which is a project for co-housing, but intergenerational. They want to reconnect the circles of life. So it will be connected with a birth house, it will be connected to a death house, in a way to bring this reality back to the housing, to our way of living. We also are working together with a school which works within a very nice experimental way of education. We have a cooperative supermarket, which are all really interested to really develop this project, even though we know we need still the permission of the government to actually realize it. But so it's connected with a real architectural proposal, with a real financial model that shows it is possible. And then connected to this, there is a transitory use of the site. Because as you saw, it's a beautiful area at this moment. It has beautiful nature. And actually a lot of collectors of citizens are now claiming this place already today as a commons. We have various artists, locals, Brussels citizens who are actually appropriating this area and already implementing very interesting commons initiatives on the site. One example, it's something you have been already seeing a couple of times in these presentations, a collective garden. This is not a project by Common Josaphat, but by locals, by neighbors who want to invest in their neighborhood, who want to create this space to meet each other, but also to reconnect to nature. But I think it's really interesting and really important to mention these gardens because they work. They really manage to connect people. And then this is a Recap Kitchen, which has already briefly mentioned in the introduction. It's a project I also helped co-founding. It has been crowdfunded, and it's a project of reusing food waste in a way to make healthy and biological dishes which we share with people. And for this, we actually put people around the table in a very everyday situation, but it's also a way to start to talk about public space. Because when you sit around the table with each other, you're on an equal level and everyone has the possibility to express how they feel. There are many more interesting projects, but to stay in the time, I stop here. And so with Common Josaphat, we have been gathering together these diverse actors and looking what can we do for you based on our proposal, based on our vision. And so starting from what is going on right now, we developed this collective framework for the transitory use. Because as the site is a publicly owned territory, it means it belongs to everyone. So not only we with our vision of the commons, but also other citizens of the city. So we should be able to welcome everyone who has an interest to do a temporary or transitory use on the site. But in a way, we have a certain way of working, a certain principles that we want people to respect. In quick, the first one talks about the natural environment. As I already briefly mentioned, there are a very beautiful natural landscape at the moment, and we have naturalists who can really point us out which areas are very precarious, because there are rare birds, because there are rare insects. So it's very important to respect this, and that if we do an intervention, we not just ruin the beautiful nature which we have at the moment. The second aspect is that it's a common space, a shared space, and it's an integrated area. It means that it's not just an island, but it's connected to the neighborhoods who live around this wasteland. And so it's really important to not forget to respect also the neighbors and their desires for the land. As a third aspect, it's a laboratory. It's a place for experimentation, for innovation. So people should be able to try innovative things and see what works and what doesn't work, so that those who really show to be valid can be implemented in the future of the sites, of the development. As a fourth aspect, it's this circular and this transitory aspect, because we don't talk about temporary use. We believe that what we do on site right now is a way to anchor a certain vision or certain values in the area. And the last one is my personal favorite, which is talking about the serenity and the conviviality we have at the site. Because to be honest, if you come there, there is a very nice atmosphere of people sharing this collective project, of people respecting each other. And we think it's really important that we can keep this, even though the site will be developed, will be a construction site in the future. And we don't need cameras for people to feel safe, but we need each other to do that.